What happens when one of music's most legendary voices walks into what should be a celebration of her decades-long career, only to be met with disrespect, condescension, and questions that cross every line imaginable? It only took 44 seconds of Andy Cohen's first question for the entire interview to spiral into one of the most explosive confrontations ever caught on live television. This is the night that changed everything. The night the Queen of Funk said, "Enough is enough." The studio lights are hot, the audience is packed, and Chaka Khan walks onto the set looking absolutely radiant. She's wearing this stunning outfit, her signature hair perfectly styled, and she's smiling. She's been doing press all week for her new album, sitting through interview after interview, and by all accounts, she's been nothing but gracious, funny, and engaging. Tonight should be no different. It's supposed to be fun. A celebration. Andy Cohen is sitting there in his usual spot, drink in hand. That smirk on his face that his fans love, but that can sometimes read as something else entirely. As Chaka takes her seat, the audience erupts in applause. They love her. Everyone loves her. She's an icon, a legend, someone who has given us hit after hit, decade after decade. She's earned her flowers 1,000 times over. Andy starts off friendly enough. "Welcome, welcome. We are so thrilled to have you here," he says, and Chaka thanks him, still smiling, still warm. The audience settles down, and there's this moment of anticipation. Everyone's excited to hear what she has to say. But then, and this is where everything starts to shift, Andy doesn't ask about the new album. He doesn't ask about her incredible career or her influences or any of the things you'd expect. Instead, he leans forward with this look on his face, this almost gleeful expression, and he says, "So, let's get right into it. I have to ask you about some of the rumors that have been floating around. There's been talk about your behavior backstage at various shows. People saying you can be, how do I put this, difficult to work with. Is there any truth to that?" The audience goes quiet. You can feel the energy in the room change immediately. Chaka's smile fades just slightly, and she takes a breath. "Difficult?" she asks, and there's something in her voice now, something careful. "I don't think wanting to be treated with respect makes anyone difficult." Andy laughs. Actually laughs, like she said something funny. Right. But come on, we've all heard the stories. Demanding this, demanding that. Diva behavior, some might say." Chaka shifts in her seat. Her posture changes. "What stories are you referring to exactly?" she asks, and her tone is direct now. She's not playing along. "Oh, you know," Andy says, waving his hand dismissively. "The usual stuff. Requests for specific dressing rooms, having people removed from backstage, that kind of thing. I mean, at what point does being a professional cross into being, too much?" This is where you can see Chaka's jaw tighten. She's been in this industry for over 50 years. She's dealt with every kind of interview, every kind of question, but you can tell this is already rubbing her the wrong way. "Let me be clear," she says, her voice steady but firm. "When I ask for a clean, safe space to prepare before I go on stage and perform for thousands of people, that is not being difficult. That is being a professional who respects herself and her craft." The audience claps a little at this, clearly on her side, but Andy just keeps going. Sure, but there's also been talk about your interactions with other artists. Some younger artists have said you weren't exactly welcoming when they tried to approach you at events." Chaka's eyes widen. "Who said that?" she asks directly. "Give me a name." Andy pauses, takes a sip of his drink, and shrugs. "I can't reveal sources, but multiple people have mentioned it." "Multiple people," Chaka repeats, and there's an edge to her voice now. "So you're going to sit here and make accusations based on unnamed sources? That's what we're doing tonight?" "I'm just asking questions," Andy says, and he's still got that smirk on his face. This is what we do on the show. We have honest conversations. Honest conversations, Chaka says slowly, would involve you actually doing your research instead of spreading gossip and rumors. The audience murmurs at this, some people shifting uncomfortably in their seats. But Andy doesn't back down. If anything, he seems emboldened by her reaction. He leans back in his chair, getting comfortable, like he's about to really dig in. Okay, let's move on then. Let's talk about your personal life. You've been married, what, 3 times? Twice, Chaka corrects him sharply. Right, twice, Andy says, not missing a beat. And both marriages ended pretty badly from what I understand. Do you think maybe the problem is, I don't know, you? Like, maybe you're not the easiest person to be with? The audience gasps. Actually gasps. This is beyond inappropriate now. This isn't playful. This isn't fun banter. This is just cruel. Chaka stares at him for a long moment, and you can see her processing what he just said, deciding how to respond. Excuse me, she finally says, her voice low. Andy holds up his hands in mock surrender. I'm just saying, 2 marriages, both ended. Maybe there's a pattern there. I mean, you have to admit, it makes you wonder. It makes you wonder, Chaka repeats, and she's not smiling at all now. Let me tell you what makes me wonder. What makes me wonder is how you think it's appropriate to sit here and psychoanalyze my personal relationships when you don't know me. You don't know what happened in those marriages, and you clearly have no respect for boundaries or basic human decency. The audience erupts in applause at this, loud and sustained, but Andy just waits for it to die down, that smirk still on his face. Wow, touched a nerve, he says. I didn't realize those were off-limits topics. Everything about my personal life is off-limits when you're approaching it with this kind of disrespect, Chaka shoots back. You invited me here to talk about my music, my career, my new album, not to sit here and be insulted. I don't think I've insulted you, Andy says, and his tone is so casual, so dismissive, like he genuinely doesn't see what he's done wrong. I'm asking questions that a lot of people want to know the answers to. No, Chaka says firmly. You're being rude. There's a difference between asking tough questions and being deliberately disrespectful, and you've crossed that line multiple times in just the last few minutes. Andy takes another sip of his drink, completely unbothered. If you can't handle a little heat, maybe you shouldn't be doing press, he says, and there's this condescending tone to his voice now, like he's talking to a child. Chaka takes a deep breath, clearly trying to maintain her composure. I have been doing press longer than you've been alive, she says. I know the difference between a challenging interview and someone who's just trying to create drama for ratings. Oh, so now it's about ratings? Andy asks, raising his eyebrows. I thought we were just having a conversation. This isn't a conversation, Chaka says. A conversation requires mutual respect. This is you ambushing me with gossip and personal attacks. The tension in the studio is thick now. You can see audience members looking at each other, clearly uncomfortable. Some of them are on the edge of their seats, sensing that something big is about to happen. The producers are probably freaking out in the control room, trying to figure out if they should cut to commercial, but the cameras keep rolling. Andy shifts gears, trying a different approach. All right, let's talk about your music then. Your new album. Some critics have said it sounds, well, dated. Like you're trying to recapture something from 30 years ago instead of evolving with the times. How do you respond to that? Chaka laughs, but it's not a happy laugh. It's the laugh of someone who's reached their limit. Dated, she says. My music is dated. According to some critics, yes, Andy says. And what do you think? Chaka asks, leaning forward. Have you even listened to the album? There's a pause, a telling pause. Andy shifts in his seat. I've heard parts of it, he says vaguely. Parts of it, Chaka repeats. So you invited me here to discuss an album you haven't even listened to, so you could instead grill me about my personal life and call me difficult and dated. Do I have that right? Andy tries to recover. We listen to a lot of music here. I can't personally listen to every single album from every guest. Then maybe don't comment on it, Chaka snaps. Maybe don't sit there and tell me my art is dated when you haven't even taken the time to actually experience it. You want to know what's dated? This whole tired setup where you invite people on your show just to tear them down for entertainment. The audience is fully on her side now. You can hear people saying, yes, and that's right, and clapping in agreement. But Andy, instead of reading the room, instead of backing down, doubles down. I think you're being overly sensitive, he says. This is what we do. We have fun. We joke around. We ask provocative questions. If you can't roll with that, I don't know what to tell you. Overly sensitive, Chaka says quietly, and there's something dangerous in her tone now. You've questioned my professionalism, attacked my personal life, insulted my music, and now you're telling me I'm too sensitive for not enjoying it. Do you hear yourself? I think you came here with a chip on your shoulder, Andy says, and his voice has an edge to it now too. He's getting defensive. I think you walked in here looking for a fight. Chaka stands up. Just stands right up, and the whole studio goes silent. I walked in here ready to have a good time, she says, her voice ringing out, clear and strong. I walked in here ready to talk about my work, my passion, the thing I've dedicated my entire life to. What I didn't walk in here ready for was to be disrespected by someone who clearly has no business interviewing people he hasn't even bothered to research. Andy stays seated, but you can see the color rising in his face. If you want to leave, leave, he says, trying to sound nonchalant, but you can hear the anger underneath. I'm sure we can find someone else to fill the rest of the show. Oh, I'm leaving, Chaka says, and she's already unclipping her microphone. But let me be very clear about why I'm leaving. I'm not leaving because I can't handle tough questions. I'm not leaving because I'm difficult or too sensitive. I'm leaving because you have been rude, unprepared, and disrespectful from the moment I sat down, and I have too much respect for myself to sit here and take it. The audience erupts again, standing up, cheering, whistling. Andy sits there, his jaw tight, clearly not happy with how this is playing out. This is ridiculous, he mutters, but his mic picks it up. Chaka hears it. She stops, turns back to face him. What did you just say? I said this is ridiculous, Andy repeats, louder now. You're making a scene over nothing. Over nothing, Chaka says, and she walks back toward him, not to sit down, but to make sure he hears every word. You think your behavior tonight was nothing? You think it's nothing to invite someone to your show just to humiliate them? Just to make yourself feel big by making them feel small? Oh, please, Andy says, rolling his eyes. Don't be so dramatic. Dramatic, Chaka says, and she laughs again, that same bitter laugh. You know what's dramatic? Whatever this is. She gestures around the set. This whole production you've got going on where you think you can say whatever you want to whoever you want, and they're just supposed to smile and take it because they're on your show. Andy stands up now, finally. You know what? Fine. Leave. We don't need you anyway. There are plenty of other guests who would love to be here. Then have them, Chaka says, her voice steady. Have all of them. But they should know what they're walking into. They should know that this isn't an interview. It's an interrogation. That you're not interested in celebrating them or their work. You're interested in tearing them down because that's what gets you your ratings. You don't know anything about me or my show, Andy shoots back. I know what I just experienced, Chaka says. And I know I'm not the first person to walk out of here feeling disrespected. I've heard the stories. I should have listened. There's a producer trying to get between them now, trying to de-escalate, but Chaka is already moving toward the exit. You Need to learn the difference between being provocative and being cruel, she calls back over her shoulder. Because right now, all you're doing is the latter. Andy, clearly furious now, makes one last jab. Good luck with that dated album, he shouts after her. Chaka stops one more time at the edge of the stage. The audience has gone completely silent again, everyone holding their breath. She turns, looks directly at Andy, and says, I've had a 50-year career making music that matters. Music that lifts people up. Music that stands the test of time. Can you say the same about what you do here? And with that, she's gone. Just walks right off the stage, past the cameras, past the shocked audience members, out into the hallway. You can hear the click of her heels fading away. The studio sits in stunned silence. Andy stands there, his face red, his hands clenched, clearly trying to figure out how to recover from what just happened. But there's no recovering from this. Everyone in that audience, everyone watching at home, just watched a legendary artist stand up for herself in the face of someone who thought he was untouchable. They watched her refuse to be diminished, refuse to play along with something that felt wrong. They watched her choose her dignity over the opportunity. And in the moment after she leaves, when the camera cuts back to Andy, still standing there, looking flustered and angry, you can see it in his face. He knows. He knows he went too far. He knows he misjudged the situation, misjudged her, misjudged what the audience would tolerate. He tries to laugh it off, tries to say something casual to the audience, but it falls flat. The energy is gone. The fun, such as it was, is over. Someone in the audience shouts, "She was right," and a few others clap in agreement. Andy's smile is gone now, replaced by barely concealed irritation. He signals for a commercial break, practically barking the words at the camera. And as they fade to black, you can see him yanking off his own microphone and stalking off the stage. What just happened in that studio wasn't just a celebrity walkout. It wasn't just another dramatic moment for the highlight reels. It was a masterclass in self-respect. It was a reminder that no matter how big the platform, no matter how bright the lights, no one has the right to treat another human being with disrespect. Especially not someone who has earned their place in history the way Chaka Khan has. She walked into that studio expecting a conversation. She got an ambush. She expected to talk about her art. She got personal attacks. She expected professionalism. She got pettiness. And when it became clear that the situation wasn't going to improve, that Andy had no intention of changing his approach or acknowledging that he was out of line, she made the only choice that made sense. She left. There's something powerful about watching someone stand up for themselves in real time. No script, no do-overs, just a person reaching their breaking point and saying, enough. And that's exactly what happened here. Chaka Khan didn't storm off in a tantrum. She didn't throw things, or scream, or lose her composure. She simply, calmly, firmly said, "This is not acceptable, and I will not participate in it anymore." Andy, for his part, seemed genuinely shocked that someone would dare to leave his show. Like the very idea that a guest might find his behavior unacceptable was foreign to him. And maybe that's the real problem. Maybe this had been going on for so long. This style of interviewing that prioritizes provocation over substance, that he forgot there might be consequences. He forgot that eventually someone would call him out. Someone would refuse to play along. And it wasn't just anyone. It was Chaka Khan, a woman who has been in the music industry for 5 decades. A woman who has seen and done it all. A woman who has no reason to put up with disrespect from anyone, let alone someone who couldn't even be bothered to listen to her album before commenting on it. She's earned the right to walk away from situations that don't serve her. And that's exactly what she did. In those final moments before she left, when she turned back one last time to face Andy, There was something almost sad in her expression. Not sad for herself, but sad that it had come to this. Sad that someone could be so blind to their own behavior. Sad that this was what passed for entertainment these days. But underneath that sadness was steel, was resolve, was the absolute certainty that she was making the right choice. And she was. She absolutely was. Because at the end of the day, no amount of publicity, no platform, no opportunity is worth sacrificing your dignity. And Chaka Khan understood that. She's always understood that. It's part of what has made her not just a great artist, but a great person. Someone who knows her worth and refuses to let anyone diminish it. The aftermath in the studio was chaotic. Producers scrambling, audience members talking amongst themselves, Andy pacing backstage, trying to figure out his next move. But none of that matters as much as the moment itself. The moment when a woman looked at a situation, recognized it for what it was, and chose herself, chose her peace, chose her self-respect over everything else. This wasn't about ego. It wasn't about being difficult or demanding or any of the other words that get thrown at women, especially women of color, especially women in entertainment, when they refuse to accept poor treatment. This was about boundaries, about standards, about refusing to be complicit in your own disrespect. Every question Andy asked, every comment he made was designed to put Chaka on the defensive, to make her react, to create a moment. And at first, she tried to answer with grace. She tried to redirect. She tried to steer the conversation back to something substantive. But when it became clear that he had no interest in that his entire goal was to prod and provoke and diminish, she changed tactics. She stopped trying to make it work and started standing up for herself. "You haven't even listened to my album," she said. And in that moment, she exposed the whole facade. Because if he hadn't listened to the album, then what was the point of any of this? Why invite her on the show at all? And the answer was clear. He didn't want to talk to Chaka Khan, the artist. He wanted to talk to Chaka Khan, the target. He wanted someone to pick apart, to question, to challenge in ways that had nothing to do with her actual work. When he called her overly sensitive, that was the moment you could see her decision solidify. Because that's the ultimate dismissal, isn't it? To tell someone that their legitimate grievances are just them being too emotional, too reactive, too much. It's gaslighting in real time, and Chaka wasn't having it. She called it out for exactly what it was, and then she removed herself from the equation entirely. The audience knew. You could hear it in their reactions, in their applause, in the way they responded every time Chaka pushed back. They knew she was right. They knew Andy had crossed lines that shouldn't have been crossed. And when she finally left, when she made that final exit, they gave her the standing ovation she deserved. Not for the drama of it, but for the courage of it. For showing that it's okay to walk away. That it's necessary, sometimes, to walk away. Andy's parting shot, that comment about her dated album, was so telling. Because even in that moment, even as she was leaving, he couldn't resist getting one more dig in. Couldn't resist trying to hurt her one more time. And that just proved her point. That this was never about having a real conversation. This was about someone using their platform to feel powerful at someone else's expense. But here's the thing he didn't count on. Chaka Khan doesn't need his platform. She doesn't need his validation or his approval. She's a legend with or without his show. And by walking out, by refusing to engage with his disrespect, she reminded everyone watching of that fact. She reminded them that real power isn't about who has the microphone or the camera or the audience. Real power is knowing when to use your voice and when to simply walk away. In that hallway, after she left the studio, Chaka took a moment to collect herself, took a breath, let the adrenaline settle, And then she kept walking, kept moving forward. Because that's what you do when you've been doing this, as long as she has. You don't let one bad interview, one disrespectful host, one uncomfortable situation define you or derail you. You acknowledge it, you learn from it, and you move on. But Andy stayed behind, stuck in that studio, stuck in that moment, trying to salvage something that was already broken, trying to spin what had just happened into something it wasn't, trying to make himself the victim instead of acknowledging his role as the aggressor. And that's the difference right there. That's what separates someone like Chaka Khan from someone like him. She took responsibility for her boundaries and her reactions. He couldn't even take responsibility for his questions. The whole thing lasted less than 20 minutes. From the moment she sat down to the moment she walked out, it was barely a full segment. But in that time, everything that needed to be revealed was revealed. The pretense of the friendly interview was stripped away. The reality of what that show actually was became crystal clear, and one person chose not to participate in it anymore, while the other person doubled down on their behavior, even as it was being called out. This is what happens when someone who has forgotten how to respect their guests meets someone who has never forgotten how to respect herself. This is what happens when provocation meets principle. This is what happens when ego meets integrity. One person walks away stronger, clearer, more certain of their value, and the other person is left standing in an empty studio, wondering where it all went wrong, but still not quite willing to look in the mirror for the answer. Chaka Khan didn't need to stay. She didn't need to convince Andy of anything or prove anything to anyone. She simply needed to honor herself, and she did, with grace, with strength, with the kind of dignity that can't be taught or manufactured or performed. The kind that comes from decades of knowing who you are and refusing to let anyone make you forget it. And that's the moment everyone remembers. Not the questions, not the provocations, not the insults, but the exit, the decision. The choice to say this is not for me, and to mean it, to follow through, to walk away with your head held high, knowing that you did the right thing, even if it wasn't the easy thing, especially because it wasn't the easy thing. In the end, this wasn't about a talk show or an interview or even about music. This was about respect, about boundaries, about understanding that some things are more important than publicity or exposure or playing the game, about knowing that you teach people how to treat you. And sometimes the best lesson you can teach is to simply refuse to accept unacceptable treatment. Chaka Khan taught that lesson perfectly, without hesitation, without apology, without doubt. And everyone who witnessed it learned something important that night, about strength, about self-worth, about the power of knowing when enough is enough, about the importance of standing up for yourself, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's caught on camera, even when the whole world is watching. Maybe especially then. This was her moment, her choice, her line in the sand. And she didn't just draw that line, she honored it. She respected it. She lived it. And in doing so, she reminded all of us what it looks like to truly value yourself, what it costs, what it requires, what it gives back. Everything. It gives back everything. Your dignity, your peace, your power, all the things that matter so much more than any television appearance ever could. That's the real story here. Not that someone walked off a talk show, but that someone chose themselves, chose their well-being over their career obligations, chose authenticity over performance, chose truth over tolerance, and made it look not just necessary, but noble. Because it was. It absolutely was. The weight of that choice hung in the air long after she disappeared from view. The audience sat there, still processing what they'd witnessed. Some were crying, some were angry, some were inspired, but everyone understood They'd seen something real, something raw, something that mattered beyond the usual celebrity gossip and manufactured drama that fills these shows. Because this wasn't manufactured. This was genuine. A genuine reaction to genuine disrespect. A genuine boundary being genuinely enforced. And in a world where so much of what we see is scripted and sanitized and carefully controlled, that authenticity hit different. It meant something.